Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome here if you're new. In this video I'm sharing with you a tutorial on how I make my mini dahlia number 1. And I'm calling it number 1 because I'd like to make at least 2 more dahlia types, at least the mini type, because dahlias are not just one typical style. There's so many and they're gorgeous flowers, and so I decided to name it number 1 because I will try to release other ones down the line with different looks. There are some dahlias that have more of a ball shape, they're more round, and there are other types of dahlias out there that are all classified as dahlias, and so that's why this one is named number 1. So this specific dahlia is actually modeled after the cafe au lait or the dinner plate dahlias that are fairly wide, and their petals are just so amazing. I tried my best to both make a template that is easy to use, easy to cut out, but also resembles that type of dahlia. So this is what it looks like up close. And I think for the techniques that are used and the number of petals, it is a very easy template to use. The template also features very specific sizing, so I tell you for every size, these are the specific petals that you use, so there's very little guesswork, but I think that the overall effect is gorgeous. So for this dahlia, there are actually 3 separate pieces. And so let me separate them first. So the very first petal that I am using is these outer petals here. They're all the same style, but I do use different sizes. So this is a 6-inch wide dahlia. So the first layer is 6 inches wide. I have 2 pieces. So I have 2 pieces of 6-inch wide. And then I size down by 1/2 inch increments. So this is 5.5 inches wide. I have 2 of those. And then also a 5-inch wide and a 4.5 inch wide. So I have 2 of each. These make the layers outside. So this one here is what I call my mini dahlia number 1. My second petal is actually this one here, and it's a longer, skinnier petal so that it mimics some of the smaller petals that are closer towards the center. So this is my mini dahlia petal number 2, and so in this file, this is the petal 1, this is the petal 2. And then I have the centers here, and I'll show you how I use this, but this is the dahlia center. So these are the 3 files that you'll get with the template, and you just resize them to get different sizes of flowers. So the first thing is prepping the petals. And so it's actually very easy. I use a knitting needle because I like the tapered end. But anything that you have that's cylindrical, whether it's just a dowel or a pencil or a glue stick, should work. So all I do to shape this is just take my knitting needle and just curl the sides of every petal. And then I also bend at the base. So I give each petal a curl on the sides and bend at the base, and then I move on and do the same exact thing for every petal. And this process will be repeated for every single petal layer using the mini petal number 1. So this does actually go pretty quickly. And shaping it this way is the easiest way that takes less time but also gives the same result. There are other ways that you can shape this petal, but I don't feel that the result for the effort is worth it. So I will bend every petal at the base. And then what I do is I also give the tip just a slight curl. So what I'm doing is I'm actually just taking the tip of the petal and I'm pressing it against the knitting needle with my thumb, and I'm just giving it a slight roll. This curves the end of the dahlia and it gives it more dimension. And just do that really quickly for the entire piece. Alright, so that is my first layer. And then also, in order to glue it, all I would do is just add a little bit of glue. And then for each layer, I'm going to rotate it so that the top layer, or the top piece, all the petals sit between the petals in the previous layer. So this is what I actually consider 1 layer of the flower. 2 pieces make 1 layer. So this is my first layer, and I will do the same for all of these petals here. Okay, so now that all the petal layers are prepped here, all I do is actually just glue them together. So in terms of gluing the petal layers together, you want to make sure that the bottom petal, or the bottom petal layer, just one of them, sits in between the petals from the previous layer. like that. So that one was my lead petal and is sitting between the petals from this layer here. You would do the same for the remaining 2 petal layers. So again, I can scrunch it up and use this as my lead petal and then place that in between the petals from the previous layer. So that's an easy guide just to make sure that you're gluing exactly where you should be. And then I have one last layer. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. So now we'll work on the center. So this piece here, this is my mini dahlia petal number 2, or I should say mini dahlia number 1, petal number 2. And this one is also 4 inches wide, so it's the same width as the last layer here. But in terms of prepping this petal, all I do is just take my knitting needle and just give it a light curl upwards. And so you want to do this very lightly. You would have your finger behind the petal, so in this case I have 2. And then you'd have your knitting needle or whatever tool you're using, and you'll just lightly push and pull up. So it just gives a light curl at the ends. It makes the tip curl in just a little bit. That's exactly what we want. And so these petals are supposed to look as if they are coming from the center and they're growing, but they're not quite the same size as your other petal layers. From here, I also bend them at the base, like that. And then I take the petal layers and glue them together. Now here you're also going to just rotate the petal layer so that it sits in between the petal from the previous layer. So this petal here sits between this petal layer. And then you can push it together so it almost forms like a closed bud. But because we're not gluing them together, it looks a little bit more open. So typically I would use 3, but I have cut out 4 just in case I like the look. Try to make it so that the flower doesn't look like it has too many unnecessary layers, because it can make it look a little too clunky and you'll lose a lot of the dimension that you get when you add too many petals. So I've cut out 4, but I may only use 3, and I typically do use that many, but sometimes it looks right, and so I will just keep it for now. So here I'm going to just add glue to the center and glue this to it. And then let's see what it looks like in our flower. And what it would look like if I add in that last layer. So I don't think it looks too bad. Sometimes I've made it where I think only 3 is enough. Here I think 4 would work. It's up to you how many you want to use. That is an option if you tend to like your flower centers to look a little fuller. But because I don't mind the way that 4 pieces look, I will go ahead and just add it because I cut that out. And then I'll glue this to the entire flower. And there's no method, you just plop it right in the center as best as you can. And I'm going to use my knitting needle to press down and make sure that's glued properly. And what you can do if you like, if you don't want to make it look like it's too much of a ball in the center, you can flip out some of these petals here. So I could have done that before I actually added it. I wasn't thinking, but that's something you can do depending on how you like your flowers to look. So you can just bend back the tips of one of the layers, your last layer, to make it look like it's not completely like a ball. Okay, so lastly we have these pieces here, and these are the dahlia center. It's essentially the same leaf, but I've made it into a file where they're all on a line. And here, in terms of prepping it, all I do is I give it a light curl, similar to how I did it here. With my knitting needle, it's very light and very slight, so that the petals curve one direction. So whatever direction it is, if you want to curl it the other way, it's all going in one direction. And for here, I used 3 pieces, but if you wanted a thicker center, you could use 4. So I've cut 4 out just in case. The minimum on my template instructions is 3. So that's something that you can keep in mind if you want to play around with it and you want to do more. So that's 2, and then I have 2 more here. We'll see whether I want to use thicker center. But this is fairly easy in terms of prepping. And then what you'll do from here, and why I like the tapered end, is I'm going to hold the tip of this knitting needle. If you're using a pen or anything else, it'll still work. But you're going to press down with your finger underneath and your tool on top. You're going to lightly pull the strip. So I shouldn't be doing two at a time. It doesn't seem to work. But you'll try to pull the tip, and that curls the strip somewhat inwards. And so when we're rolling that, that helps it a lot. So let's just do it with one. So when you pull very gently across, it curls that inwards, and that's what helps us get that tighter center. Let me do one last one. I'm not pulling too hard. I'm just lightly pulling across as I'm pulling it between my finger and my knitting needle. And we want to start the center about a finger's diameter. So what I mean by that is this is the tip of the flower center strip. I'm going to wrap it around my finger, and there about is where I'm going to add the first drop of glue. And then start rolling. From here, you just roll. And then you add the pieces as you go. So you can see that's about a dime size in the center. And then I'm just going to keep adding strips. So curling it the way that I did just helps it so that you're not having to do too much work in holding each strip to make sure that it curves inwards. So I will just wrap all of these around the center, or I'll roll them. You can see it's forming a center that looks tightly closed. That's what we want. It's like a little, it's like the bud or center of a flower. Because with these will not curl in perfectly and close up, but this one will, or it'll look like it's a closed center. Okay, this is my third strip. And this is what it looks like. So let's put it in first. What I like to do is I actually like to press down just a little bit to flatten it out. And then I place it right in the center. To me, that looks perfect. But if you wanted to make it a little bit thicker, you could add one more strip. See, it's slightly thicker by adding that extra piece. And then we're going to add glue to the bottom. And then add that to the center. You want to peel back as many layers as you can so you don't accidentally glue it, like I did just there. And so that is the mini dahlia number 1. You can shape this around a little bit different if you like, but it's fairly easy to make, and it takes me about 4 or 5 sheets of paper, 8.5 by 11 size, to make one flower. I think that's really great for a 6-inch wide flower. So that is my mini dahlia number 1. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I did work hard to make this template easy, but also retaining a lot of the characteristics of a dinner plate dahlia. I will leave the Etsy listing down below in the description box, and all my templates are still 50% off if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.